Hi everyone, the first thing we're going to do is gather our materials.
You're going to want 2 different fabrics, 3 pieces for the outside and 3 pieces for the inside. You're also going to need a few pieces for applique and any limbs or ears, and then a nylon zipper, some tape, and some basting spray or pins. First, you're going to hoop your stabilizer. I would recommend medium tearaway only. Anything else might be too bulky. Then you're going to want to run your first placement stitch step for any ears or limbs. Once that's done stitching, lay a piece of fabric right side facing up over your placement stitch. I would use some 505 spray to baste it in place so it doesn't shift when it's stitching any inner details of an ear or the horn, for instance. Then you're going to want to run any of the detail stitch steps up until you get to the final outline stitch. Once you get there, stop and lay a piece of fabric right side facing down, covering the entire design, and run the final outline tack down stitch. Repeat those same steps for any additional limbs, or in this case, the horn. Once that's done stitching, you're going to want to unhoop your design and tear away any of the excess stabilizer. Then you want to cut around and turn the pieces right side out and iron them. I happen to use my hair straightening iron because it's just easier for me to do it at my desk rather than get up and go over to my ironing board. Now you're going to start the bag part of this design. The first step is going to be hooping your stabilizer again and running the placement stitch for the entire bag and the zipper. You're going to want to take a nylon zipper with the zipper pull to the left and place it over your placement stitch and tape it into place. Once it's secured, place your hoop back in the machine and run your next step, which will be the zipper tack down stitch. Once it's all tacked down, peel away all of the tape that you used to hold it in place. This next step gets a little tricky. You're going to want to take your fabric for the bottom portion of the bag and line it up with the bottom of the zipper right side facing down, and you're going to want to tape it in place. You want to make sure, if it's a directional fabric, that when you pull it down it's going the right direction, so make sure you pay attention to that when you're cutting your fabric and when you're laying it on top of the zipper. Once you got this where you want it, you're going to want to take your tape and secure it in place so that we can tack it down with the machine. Once that's all secure, you're going to want to flip your hoop over and do the same thing on the back side. You're going to take your inner fabric and lay it face down, lined up again with the bottom of the zipper, and you're going to secure it in place with some tape. Once you're done securing that in place, flip your hoop back over and place it back into the machine. You're going to want to make sure that your fabric lays nice and flat on the front and on the back without moving it from where you secured it. Then you're going to want to run your tack down stitch. for these 2 pieces of fabric. Once that's done running, you're going to want to make sure you remove all of that blue tape again. Now, since the bag we're doing has some applique and detail stitching on that bottom portion of the bag there, we're going to pull just that top fabric down and baste it in place real good with some 505 spray, or you can use tape or pins if you prefer. Make sure that inner orange fabric there stays pulled up out of the way of the hoop so that when it does the stitching, it doesn't secure those 2 together. Run any of the applique or detail stitching that may be on the bag. So in this case, we're going to run the ears, the nose, the mouth, and that applique piece around the mouth. Take your design out of the hoop, and now you're going to pull that back piece of fabric that we had lifted out of the way down, because we're going to secure this in place. That way we can move on to the top portion of the bag. So pull that down real good, make sure it's all nice and laying flat and even. Put your hoop back in the machine and run your next step, which will tack down along the zipper and around the face of this bag. Once that's done, you'll see here that the fabrics are nice and secured together. That way it'll hold it out of the way of the last steps that we're going to do now. So you're going to repeat the same steps you did for the bottom portion of the bag. You're going to line the top portion up with the top of the zipper, right side facing down, and secure it in place, again with your tape, or you can pin it. I just find tape easier. And then you're going to flip the hoop over and do the same thing with your inner fabric. Lay it face down up with the top of your zipper and secure that in place. Make sure you're, again, paying attention to the direction of your fabric. You would hate to mess up right here and have the top portion of your bag going the wrong way. You would have just wasted all that time and all of those materials. So just make sure you keep an eye on that. So run your tack down stitch, and then you're going to want to remove that tape. After you get that front tape all nice and removed, you're going to want to pull that front piece of fabric up. Since we don't have any applique or detail stitching going on the top portion of this bag, we're going to be able to pull both the front and back up to stitch that tack down stitch and that top stitching near the zipper. So turn it over to your back, and again remove the tape and baste that piece of fabric up and in place. So you're going to place your hoop back in your machine, making sure that your fabrics stay nice and flat and not folded or wrinkled in any way. That way you get a nice seam along that zipper. Once it's all nice and how you want it, run that tack down stitch. Now you're going to run the next stitch, which is going to be the placement stitch for either the limbs or a ribbon for a side tab or keychain. Here I'm using some fold over elastic and I'm taping it in place, and then I'm going to run a tack down stitch to hold it. Once that's all done, we're going to run the placement stitch for the ears and the horn. Now you want to tape all of them in place, and you're going to stitch the tack down stitch. Peel away any tape Then unzip your zipper halfway. Now take the outer part of your bag for the back side of it and lay it face down, right side facing down over the entire design. Get it nice and in place and flat where you want it, and run this next step, which is going to be a tack down stitch. Once that's done stitching, you're going to want to take your hoop out of the machine and flip it over. Get your inner fabric and you're going to want to baste it in place. I used some spray on the outside of my design. I just made sure I stayed outside of the seams. I pressed it on there nice and flat, and then I put it back in the machine and I ran the final step. The final step's triple stitch tack down all the way around your bag, but it's going to leave a gap so that you can turn it right side out. Now there is a last step in the design. This step is only to keep your machine from going to the center and catching anything on your bag, so you don't have to run this step. Now you're going to want to unhoop your design and cut out around your bag. Just make sure you leave extra fabric near your turn hole, because you're going to need to fold this in when you stitch your bag closed. So find your two inner fabrics and you're going to flip your bag so that the inside of the bag is facing out. So your bag is going to be inside out. So now you're going to find the outside fabric over where that tab is, and you're going to cut the excess off. You don't need to really worry about that. It's stitch closed on those two fabrics. So just hold your inner fabric out of the way and just snip that extra fabric right off. Now you're going to want to take the inner fabric tabs and fold them in and then stitch them together. You can whip stitch it or you can ladder stitch it, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to use my glue gun and I'm going to glue it shut. So once you get it all stitched or glued shut, you're going to want to take a seam ripper and peel away all of that extra stabilizer that's around the zipper. Once you've completed this, you're going to want to unzip the zipper all the way, or as much as you can. Then you're going to turn your bag right side out. If you look at the inner seams, you're going to notice that everything is enclosed. You're not going to have any raw seams anywhere inside the bag. Now you can iron the bag, or you can use a hair straightener like I do and just flatten all those seams, and that's it. You're done. You just made your very first in the hoop bag with Kylie and Chaos Embroidery Designs. Thanks guys. Make sure to check us out on Facebook.